Hello there, and welcome back. This is a new series where we find the scariest stories ever told on the internet and share them with you right here. So please sit back and enjoy. Tonight's episode is I Know the Truth About What They Were Doing to the Homeless. We'll present the story as it was told, then slow it down. Times, places, and the pattern that makes your stomach drop. No sensationalizing, no guessing people's names, just the words, the implications, and the questions they won't stop asking once the screen goes dark. I'm Dr. Insomnia. Dim the lights. Let's listen closely. I won't go into detail why I was thrown out of my house at 16. Financial problems. I came from a poor family. Mom and Dad wanted me to get a job, and I wanted to stay in school, so that caused arguments. I also made the mistake of revealing to them an intimate part of myself I should have kept fucking hidden. Look, I won't say being on the street was better, but being away from that toxic environment was like a breath of fresh air. I lived in a pretty big town, and there were a lot of kids living on the streets. I did try and find somewhere at first. I stayed in hotels with my last remaining cash, but then I found myself with the option of eating or starving. I was very stubborn at 16. I hated asking for handouts, and just the idea of asking my school for help was like losing. I didn't want my friends and teachers to know about my situation, so I dropped school. Again, I was a stupid, stubborn kid. I obviously should have asked for help, but back then teachers didn't care. Kids in my school were severely bullied and nothing ever changed. They were there to teach, and that was it. So, the thought of telling them I was fucking homeless just wasn't happening. I didn't want their pity. I didn't want their attempt to try empathize with me when in reality, they did not give a fuck. So, yes, I ended up on the streets. But there was a community of us. We were all in the same situation, thrown out for the same reasons. Toxic and abusive parents or significant others. So, all we had were each other. I've seen homeless kids depicted on TV movies as scrappy pickpockets. That's a lie. The kids who I hung with weren't brave enough to pickpocket. If they saw cash, food, anything they wanted hanging around unclaimed, they would snatch it up. The pickpocket thing is just the media glamorizing the idea of being a street kid, turning them into a fun, quirky group of teenage criminals trying to survive. The reality is a lot more depressing. I ended up in a group of kids on the south side of our town. Ben, the leader of our gang, was the latest to disappear. Look, I didn't believe in the child catcher rumors. I thought they were just stories, but it became evident someone was actually kidnapping street kids. I may have come from a toxic house, but I was sheltered. I didn't think things like that existed. I had never been in the type of situation when they could exist. Kidnapping was like a foreign concept to me. It only happened in movies and cartoons, but then familiar faces I knew started to disappear. Carly, a street performer who was trying to earn enough money to leave town. Jason, the weird kid with the eye patch who tried to steal my phone. These kids weren't friends, but they felt comfortable. They felt like a community, even when I wasn't personally close with them. Carly always smiled at me, offering me fresh donuts some old man handed her in the morning. Jason was always skulking around the music stores, asking for change. Every time I saw him, we talked about things that didn't even matter, but talking to him made me feel less alone. When Jason disappeared, that normalcy I'd gotten used to started to fade. I looked for him, but his familiar purple woolen hat had vanished. Carly was always singing under the bridge every afternoon. I could hear her voice while snoozing in the park entrance. She sounded like an angel. With her gone, I felt colder than usual. I couldn't get warm no matter how many times I rubbed my hands together and stuck them under my coat. I had holes in my socks and shoes, and the freezing chill was creeping into my bones. Carly's disappearance really shook me, especially when, several days later, a guy took her spot with his guitar, screaming out painfully bad reimaginings of pop songs. When Ben vanished, I started taking word of mouth more seriously. He's been taken by the white van was the rumor floating around. Apparently some kid saw Ben getting dragged into a white van. This kid was also known to say BS to get attention, but his claim was actually believable. Ben, Carly, Jason, and the other missing kids were last seen at the homeless shelter. So, the place where kids were vanishing wasn't exactly ideal. But it did have hot soup and coffee, as well as a place to charge my phone, so I risked it. The homeless shelter was where most kids hung out every day. I used the mostly broken facilities to shower, use the bathroom, and try to make connections with kids who were well known. It was pretty much a survival instinct at this point. If I was going to survive on the streets, I needed people I could count on. I had this constant need to get my name out there, just in case I was one of the missing. But it turns out not all homeless kids play nice. I won't go into detail, but there were a lot of names I thought I could trust and quickly learned that I couldn't fucking trust anyone. I got my first phone stolen, and then my shoes were snatched while I was sleeping. I was definitely hardened after a while on the streets, so when Charlie came along, I basically told him to go fuck himself. All of the connections I made just lost me cash, food, and my shit. The worst thing you can be as a street kid is nice. If you want to be left alone, you have to make it very fucking clear. Without Ben's leadership, things went off the handle. I was quickly labeled as a naive bastard who FDW anyone. Most of my spots were compromised, so I had no choice but to once again risk the homeless shelter. My initial plan was to grab food and coffee and make a run for it. I had the town library as a safe spot until 4 p.m., and after 10, the guy who owned the Chinese takeout begrudgingly let me sleep in his doorway. I think he felt sorry for me, but at this point I was too fucking cold to care about pride. The volunteers in the soup kitchen were my age. I didn't know them, thankfully, but I was eager to get out of there. The food was a choice of cold curry or soup. I chose soup and a chunk of stale bread. The coffee was always lukewarm, but it was coffee. I wasn't going to complain. I was trying to eat it as fast as I could without burning my mouth, when a kid I could only describe as the human embodiment of a golden retriever slid next to me, grasping his own bowl of soup. With dark brown hair under his hood and freckled cheeks, not to mention his expensive jacket and shoes, I knew the streets would eat him alive. This kid looked like he'd stepped right out of a perfect suburban home. He had a mommy and daddy, and a perfect fucking life. Lucky him. I was having a hard time taking in his expensive clothes. Yes, his hair was greasy and his clothes were slightly discolored, holes in his gloves, dirt smearing his face, so he was clearly sleeping rough. But this guy was asking to get his branded coat stolen. "Take that off," I said through a mouthful of stale bread. That was all I could say. I didn't want to say hi, because hi was an invitation to join me. I was on my third phone, and I wasn't taking any chances with this kid. 2 years of fucking with the wrong people, I was done. I nodded at his jacket, and he looked confused. "Huh? Put it in your backpack, idiot." I was just warning him of my past mistakes. I did have my dad's expensive watch, and some shoes I bought with money from a summer job before I left home. I lost both of them because I failed to hide them. Elizabeth and Maury, 2 older girls I thought I could trust, were now proud owners of my shit. The guy had this docile look on his face, eyes wide like a fucking deer. I had no idea how he had survived this long. If he was sleeping in the shelter, yes, it was safer and warmer, but it also made him a target for kidnapping. "Unless you want to lose it," I added, finishing my soup. The guy continued eating, completely unbothered. "Your jacket," I said directly. I didn't lose my patience much, but this guy was testing me. "Take it off, or you will lose it." After being fucked around with by Ben's asshole friends, it felt strangely good to be an asshole back to a total stranger. The kid hesitated before pulling off his jacket and backpack, awkwardly yanking off the jacket and stuffing it inside his bag. Then he sat there shivering like an idiot, and I gave up and offered him one of my spare sweaters. Street kids usually wanted something in return, and I was waiting for his proposition. Instead, he said, "Thanks," and pulled it on. "I'm Charlie." He introduced himself when I stood to leave, grabbing my own pack. I told him I didn't ask and that it was nice meeting him. When he followed me, I thought we were just going the same direction. But then I took a turn down an alleyway, and his footsteps hesitated before coming after me. I was all ready to tell him to beat it, but Charlie looked lost. He had this look on his face, like he was trying and failing to look intimidating. This kid didn't look like he was going to steal my shit while I was sleeping. I didn't officially ask him to join me. It just sort of happened. When I got back to my spot, he dropped his pack and started unrolling his sleeping bag next to mine. I took advantage of his kindness, that innocence that was yet to be drained from him by every stone-cold night that never seemed to end. Midnight and dawn felt like centuries apart, and I was never warm enough. My toes were always numb, my fingers losing all feeling. The worst part was when I didn't have enough to eat, so I started fantasizing. But Charlie never lost that stupid fucking smile. Even when he was freezing to death, I told him to grab us food for the night, and he came back with 2 pizza rolls and a can of soda to share. I asked him how he'd gotten them, and he shrugged with a grin. This kid expected me to play along with his cryptic games every time he did something vaguely helpful. I didn't care how he'd gotten them. I was just thankful. I started to see Charlie as less of a nuisance and more of a friend. Charlie was loud and obnoxious and drove me insane with his dreams of getting out of town in his situation. But he made me smile, even in freezing temperatures. He never told me about why he was on the streets. Instead, he always changed the subject back to me. I didn't realize how self-centered I was until I spilled my entire life story to him. And when he opened up about himself, I started talking about myself once again. In a way, I think I saw it like a competition. "Oh, your life is bad. Well, this happened to me." I waited for him to get frustrated or angry, but he just listened. He always listened. It was snowing when the 2 of us sat shivering on a wall, our legs dangling. I don't remember whose genius idea it was to sit in sub-zero temperatures, but I remember enjoying the icy breeze on my face. Everything was covered in white. I don't think I should have enjoyed snow. It was extremely fucking easy to freeze to death in these conditions. But it was also snow, and I was still a stupid kid. I still liked snow. Charlie was, as usual, being his chipper self. He scored us a pack of chips to share, so we were passing it back and forth. My hands were so numb I couldn't even feel the chips. I just stuffed them in my mouth. "Do you believe in angels, Finn?" That question caught me off guard. Charlie's gaze was glued to a little girl perfecting a snow angel in front of us. The answer was no. I didn't believe in God, any gods, any religion. If God existed, or the angels, my parents wouldn't have kicked me out for liking guys. In the earlier days, I prayed for help. I had the stupid idea that my mom would actually hunt me down and take me back home. But God didn't exist, at least not to me, and I was tired of pretending. I didn't respond to Charlie, and his head dropped onto my shoulder. I jerked back, swallowing a hiss. I shoved him away, and for the first time since I'd met him, his smile started to fade. "Sorry," he muttered, rubbing his hands together. Charlie seemed to notice our proximity, shuffling away from me. He said I was warm, and I hated myself for shouting at him, because he was fucking warm too. I liked the feeling of his head on my shoulder. He felt safe and warm, and the closest thing I had to a home. I jumped off the wall, making an excuse to distance myself. I think I told him I was going to the shelter to try to find warm clothes from the lost and found. Charlie didn't reply, only jerking his head in a nod. He told me he'd be right there when I got back, and his words settled my twisting gut, the growing lump in my throat. I used my time away from him to come to terms with my feelings, and instead of pushing them away, like I had done for so long, suppressing and fucking swallowing them down, I realized I wanted Charlie to stay with me. Charlie was home. I had barely known this kid for a few months, and yet with him, I didn't feel cold anymore. I went back to the wall, ready to apologize to Charlie, but to my surprise, he was gone. I figured he'd gone searching for food since it was almost around dinner time, so I waited. I waited until the sky was dark, and I was so fucking cold, my bones ached. I noticed an old man who was playing chess with pigeons earlier. Charlie had pointed him out, laughing at one particular pigeon who seemed too self-aware. I hurried over to him. "Did you see me earlier?" I twisted around, pointing at the wall the two of us sat on. The man nodded. "Oh, you're looking for your friend?" He slid another chess piece across the board. "I believe he walked away with the man a few hours ago now." "What man?" I felt like I was going to puke. I asked him to describe the guy, but the old man shrugged. "I have bad eyes, kid. It was just a man. Late 40s, I think." His expression softened when my stomach crawled into my throat. "Are you all right?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sour candy, dropping it into my hand. "You should go home now, kid. I'm sure your parents are worried about you." Again, I asked him to describe this man, this time through my teeth. But the old guy just turned back to his one-man chess game. I think part of me was in denial. I went back to our sleeping spot, expecting Charlie to be there, already comfortable in his sleeping bag, talking about optimistic BS. But he wasn't. I ran back to the shelter with his name choked in my mouth. I was living my own personal nightmare, being snatched into the night and nobody even knowing my name. I just got weird looks, kids looking progressively more freaked out. I wouldn't accept it at first. Charlie could have been anywhere. But the longer I waited for him in all of our spots, it became clear that Charlie was just another missing street kid who was there 1 minute and gone the next. He was another Ben, another Carly, but this time I made the mistake of getting to know him. He was more than a name. Charlie was my friend. I asked strangers if they'd seen him. Passers-by looked me up and down like I was dirt on their shoe. These people had places to be. They didn't care about some faceless kid disappearing from the street. I already knew what they were thinking when they offered pitiful smiles and said things like, "Sorry, I don't know. I can't help you, kid. I'm sure he's out there somewhere." They were wondering why Charlie was sleeping rough in the first place, why he didn't just get help. I'm going to tell you the hardest thing I've come to realize. It's easy to be numb on the streets, easy to shut down, easy to forget to mourn because it was too fucking cold. I didn't forget about Charlie, but I did bury him, so I wouldn't forget how to survive. So, a month later, I thought I was fucking hallucinating when I saw that all too familiar jacket, the one I told him multiple times to keep out of sight. It was snowing again, and it was thick and wet, clinging to my jeans. I was trying to find a patch of concrete free of snow to dump my sleeping bag. I scored hand warmers from one kid who was nice enough to offer them for a DS I'd found. There he was, somehow. Charlie was standing in the middle of an empty road in dead of night. I didn't question why or how. I just hugged him, mentally promising myself I would never let him go again. Charlie was so warm, his coat was thicker, and his backpack was nowhere to be seen. "Where did you go?" I demanded, shoving him back. Charlie just smiled, and I noticed his pocket, an iPhone sticking out. I think I was about to laugh, wondering just how he'd managed to get an iPhone, when a clammy hand suddenly clamped over my mouth. Warm arms wrapped around my torso and yanked me back. I screamed, but my cries were muffled, the hand clamping tighter until I couldn't fucking breathe. I remember being violently dragged back, my feet stumbling, my body struggling to stay upright. I was dragged halfway down the street, hoisted onto a stranger's shoulders, and dumped into the back of an awaiting van. It didn't feel like it was happening to me. All those nights I had nightmares about being the next kid snatched away. I never thought it would be me. I couldn't even cry out. My body felt paralyzed. I was dragged backwards through snow, and then I was on my knees on the ice-cold flooring of a van, jerking left to right, staring at shutters being pulled down like I was an animal. I dived forward, but I was trapped. "I'm sorry, Finn." Charlie's voice pricked the silence. "But you're the perfect body and shape for my father," he said, his voice deadpan and wrong. "I hope this doesn't change things between us." "We're still friends, right?" I fucking screamed at him. That bastard. He played the role so well, I should have fucking applauded him. I slammed my fists into the shutters, but the ignition came to life and the van jerked forward, sending me stumbling back. I dropped to my knees, choking on the stink of decay. I didn't want to look. The light was too bright, too invasive, scorching the chill from my skin. I stayed on my knees until the smell got so bad I had to fucking look. In front of me were bodies. Most of them were faceless, with no features, skin already crumbling from bones jutting out. One of them caught my eye, lying at the bottom of the pile. Ben. His skin was gray, dried blood staining his face, painting his clothes. I was already trying to roll him onto his front so I didn't have to look at him. His eyes were open, like he was still alive. I shoved him onto his stomach and something sour crawled up my throat, my stomach revolting. I thought I was seeing things, but no. When I reached forward, my fingers touched them. The twisted, feathery appendages protruding from twin slits, cruelly sliced into a jutting spine. I shuffled back, a cry clawing from my throat. Wings. They were rotten, decaying. The wings of a bird or something else, sliced with his flesh. I could see where his back had been cut open all the way down his spine. Ben was dead. Carly's short brown curls were buried under another corpse, a much younger kid. I could still see the pale blue of her coat, her yellow hat still frozen to her head. Carly had one singular wing sticking from her back, while the rest of her rotted away. I tripped over something, Carly's backpack. I could glimpse Jason's kicks sticking out from the pile. I couldn't look. They had names. They were real kids. Carly, Ben, Jason. They existed, even if this world was so obsessed with fucking erasing them. "Finn?" Charlie's whisper slipped through the shutters. I held onto his voice, willing it to be him. "Charlie." "Do you believe in angels?" he asked me once again. He still had that voice, that innocent chipper tone I fell for. But there was an unmistakable twisting madness clinging to every word. I didn't respond. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. After a while, his voice stopped trying to get my attention. I just sat, freezing cold, my arms around my knees. I was going to fucking die. I kept looking at the kids who vanished, their bodies twisted and contorted into a cruel fantasy. The van stopped when I was falling asleep, jerking me awake. I heard footsteps outside. The shutter slid open, and in front of me, to my surprise, was a middle-aged woman. Her smile was kind, despite the gleam in her eye. She held out her arms, gesturing for me to come toward her. "It's okay, honey," she told me. "You're okay now?" Charlie was standing next to her, his arms folded. "Careful," he muttered, nudging her. I saw his lip curl in disgust. Illuminated in the van's headlights, I saw who really was. A spoiled, psychotic kid playing with his toys. Charlie mockingly stepped back. "He might attack you." Behind him stood a towering man, holding a gun, pointing it between my eyes. I had no choice, letting them pull me from the van. The man was quick to slip a shot into the back of my neck, which turned my body to lead. I was lifted into someone's arms. I remember they were warm. The last thing I remember is a bright light getting closer. I don't know how long I was out for. Long enough to get an actual, proper sleep. When I opened my eyes, I was staring at the sun peeking through gaps in a wooden door, my head turned at an awkward angle. It looked like I was in some kind of farmhouse. I could see piles of hay and horse shit in the corner. I was lying on my stomach, my wrists pinned down. The pain crept in slowly. At first a dull thud before slamming into me, agonizing lightning bolts striking down my spine. So fucking painful, my vision blurred and feathered, losing focus. I've had sensory issues since I was a kid, and I could feel the entirety of my upper back had been split open. I could feel my own blood dripping down my skin, and something cruel and sharp forcing flaps of flesh apart. The thought of being cut open was enough to send me into fucking hysteria. I remember screaming until my throat was raw, until I passed out again. This time, it was a mercy. The pain wouldn't leave, pulling me into agony, and then letting me go. When I came around for the second time, I felt the ice-cold scalpel slicing into my back, but I didn't feel like I was cut open anymore. I felt a painful tugging when I tried to move, stitches holding me together. That's all finished. The body is almost ready. But when? You said that last time, and the last 3 angels died, Dad. Admit that you're just killing them, and you have no idea what you're doing. I said he's ready, so let him fly. Come on, Dad, I want to see the angel fly. His stitches are still fresh. When he's ready, you can play with him. I was trying to find the best position to lie on my side, when footsteps startled me. Hey, Finn! Charlie's voice was an excited whisper. I felt his warm fingers tiptoe down my back before reaching for my restraints. He pulled them apart, helping me up, and I immediately dragged my hand down my back, where I was sure I'd touched my ugly, protruding spine. But instead, I felt smooth skin. Slowly, I lowered myself off the table. Charlie was holding my backpack. Here, he said excitedly, shoving it into my chest. Dad says I'm not allowed to let you go yet, but I'm too impatient. Without responding, I took my backpack, shoved past him, and broke into a sprint. I pushed through the doors of the farmhouse and kept running. I expected to be grabbed and pulled back, but I wasn't. Charlie just stood there watching me, grinning, an inhuman grin stretched across his face. I didn't stop until I couldn't breathe, until I was on my knees, on some unfamiliar road in the middle of nowhere. I was picked up by a woman who offered to take me to the sheriff's station. She gave me hot tea and food, but I declined both. When we got into town, and I was sure I knew where I was, I dived out of her car. I went to the restroom, pulled off my shirt, and ran my fingers down my back. I could feel them. Something was moving under my skin, twitching like they were alive. When I gingerly touched my skin, I could feel tiny stitches all the way down my spine. Part of me wondered what would happen if I ripped them open. After a single restless night on the street, I realized I couldn't fucking do it anymore. I ended up asking for help when the pain in my back kept me up at night. I could feel them physically trying to push through my skin, straining against my spine. I couldn't sleep on my back or my side. The best sleeping position was lying on my stomach. Winter moved into spring and I felt like I was dying. I couldn't eat and I was weak. I think it was luck, maybe a miracle. I walked into one of my old teachers, Mrs. W. She didn't ask about my situation, but she did offer a place to stay. That was the best thing about Mrs. W. No matter how much I knew she wanted to ask, she never invaded my privacy. She saw the scars on my back, saw me puke up everything I ate, but she didn't speak. Mrs. W. asked me if I wanted to share anything with her, and I said, no. If anyone knew what was inside my back, I'd be sliced open again. I was 19 at this point, and I was tired and in too much pain to care about accepting handouts. Mrs. W. let me sleep in her spare room. She offered me food, but I could never eat it. I could only drink water, and even that was hard to stomach. She took me to the emergency room to get my back checked out, but after I suffered a panic attack at the thought of opening up to a doctor, she promised no hospitals. The pain got worse. It fucking laughed at medication. It got so bad one night I stood on the roof of Mrs. W.'s house and let the pain take over, ripping through me until something was splitting my spine, sending me to my knees. I could feel them coming through, breaking through my skin. They felt wrong and awkward, like additional limbs. I panicked and with shaking hands forced the twitching things back into twin slits. That did relieve the pain. I still couldn't eat or drink, but I started to feel human again. Mrs. W. offered to send me back to school, and I did. I went back to finish high school. The eating, drinking thing got easier. I think my body just got used to it. After school, I got into community college, and Mrs. W. helped me buy my first place. I grew up with the gnawing feeling that something wasn't right with me. The pain was still agonizing, and at times I would have to rip open the stitches and let them free. I've never once tried to figure them out because I'm fucking terrified of them. I'm 29 now. I live far away from my hometown. I have a boyfriend and an apartment, and I finally feel human again. Last night I was waiting for a train home. It was freezing, and already I could feel my back twitching, pain starting to gnaw at me. It's worse these days, not just the pain. I'm sleepwalking. I'll find myself blocks away from my house, with no recollection of how I got there. I don't know why I'm no different from my teenage self. I still don't want to ask help, because whatever is inside me isn't fucking human, so I kept my mouth shut. There was a homeless girl slumped in the corner of the platform. I'd made it my goal. Whenever I see a homeless kid, I point them to the nearest shelter. And when they roll their eyes at me, I offer to take them there myself. I don't leave them until I know these kids are safe. Yes, they can be difficult. They're a lot more vocal these days. Kids hate authority figures, especially authority figures that failed them. But I want to make it clear to them that they can ask for them, and there is help. I was already halfway across the platform when I glimpsed familiar brown curls nestled under a green beanie. I knew it was him. He was wearing that exact same jacket clinging to a wider frame. He was taller, his face more matured, with a 5 o'clock shadow, talking loudly on an expensive phone. I took my eyes off of the girl for 1 second. 1 second. I turned back to her, and she was gone. Just like that. When I searched the crowd, I caught her blonde ponytail behind her, a man pulling her through strangers. I started forwards when someone pulled me back. No, Finn. She has the perfect shape and body for my father. I want to see you fly, Finn. When I left the train station, sitting on a bench was his old threaded backpack. Nothing inside, but I know why he left it. He's telling me he's watching me. Charlie is bragging that he's taking more kids right in front of me. I've looked everywhere for the girl and I can't find her. When I asked a group of street kids, they were defensive, clearly not trusting me. Before I warned them someone was kidnapping them. They told me 3 guys and a girl, the blonde, have all vanished. I asked when, and that's when they started getting suspicious. They left without telling me, and I've spent the last week looking for these kids. The only way I'm going to find these kids is to find the sick bastard who took me, before he does to them what he did to Ben, Carly, and Jason, and me. If this story left you uneasy, good, that means you're listening. What we heard tonight wasn't just a scare. It was a shape made of details, distances, and people most of us overlook. If you recognized anything specific, report it to the proper local services. Never harass, dox, or chase. Share your thoughts respectfully below and tell me which internet legend you want next. I'm Dr. Insomnia. This was the scariest stories ever told on the internet. Lock the door you're sure was already locked and check who might be sleeping outside it.